200 billion euros, that is the amount of suspicious money that flowed through one single branch of one European bank in one small country over the course of about 9 years. Not a typo, 200 billion. It became known years later as the Danske Bank case, and I want to be clear from the very first minute of this series. We are not here to put one bank in the dock. We are here because every organization in Europe can learn something from how that money moved, because it did not move by breaking the rules, it moved by using them. Here's the part most people miss. The criminals behind schemes like this almost never break a single law. They do something far smarter. They find the gaps between the laws of different countries, and for 30 years, Europe handed them those gaps for free. And if you work anywhere near money, in a bank, in crypto, in real estate, in accounting, in a law firm, even in a football club, this affects you directly because the rule book that governed all of this just changed completely, and the clock to comply is already running. For more than 30 years, the European Union fought money laundering with something called directives. Think of a directive like a recipe. Brussels writes the recipe, but every country gets to cook it their own way. Add more salt here, skip a step there, use a different oven. The result was 27 slightly different rule books across 27 countries. The same shell company could be low risk in one nation, high risk in its neighbor, and completely exempt in a third. Criminals did not need to hide. They just needed a good map. And those gaps were not anyone being lazy. They formed naturally because every country wrote its own version, updated it on its own timetable, and interpreted it through its own supervisor. 27 good intentions still added up to one leaky system. Picture how it actually worked. Money enters the system somewhere lenient. It gets layered through companies and accounts until its origin is blurred. Then it emerges somewhere respectable. Looking perfectly clean, place it, layer it, and bring it back. The same 3 steps every time. There is a name for this game. Regulatory arbitrage. It just means shopping between rulebooks to find the weakest one. It is the villain of this entire series, and almost every rule we are about to explore exists to shut one of these gaps for good. So in 2024, the European Union did something it had never done before in this area. It threw out the recipe and shipped the finished meal. One single regulation, the same exact text, applying directly in every member state on the very same day. No local cooking allowed. If you work in compliance, I have a question for you already. How many times have you watched a transaction that felt wrong, but technically ticked every box on the form? Hold that thought, because that exact feeling is what these new rules were built around. The new rulebook has a name, Regulation 2024/1624. Most people just call it the AMLR, the Anti-Money Laundering Regulation, and it sits at the center of a brand new system with 3 partners around it. Alongside it sits a directive that fixes the national plumbing, a brand new authority called AMLR that can supervise firms directly from Frankfurt, and an upgraded set of rules that finally makes crypto transfers traceable. 4 parts, 1 machine. Why does one identical text matter so much? Because the moment every country runs the exact same rule, the gaps between them close. There is no longer a weakest link to shop for. That single idea, one rulebook for everyone, is the heart of the whole reform. At the center of it all is one deceptively simple duty. Know who you are actually dealing with. It sounds obvious, but the new rules make it sharper, deeper, and continuous. You do not check a customer once and forget them. You keep knowing them. And it goes further than the name on the account. You have to find the real human being who ultimately owns or controls a company, no matter how many shells and layers are stacked on top to hide them. Following that trail is one of the hardest things this law demands. When something does look wrong, you have to report it fast to the authorities. And here is the strange part. You must not tip off the customer that you have done so. Not a word, not a hint. The instinct to warn becomes the offense. Some money is not just suspicious, it is forbidden outright. Sanctioned funds you must freeze on the spot. Anonymous accounts and bearer instruments shut down. Anonymity itself, the launderer's oldest friend, is being switched off across the system. And the net got much wider. For the first time, this law reaches crypto firms, crowdfunding platforms, the people who sell so-called golden visas, dealers in luxury goods, and yes, professional football clubs and their agents. Industries that never had to think about this before. There is also a hard new limit that touches ordinary life. Across the entire European Union, you will no longer be able to pay more than 10,000 euros in cash for goods and services. Try to split it into smaller linked payments, and the law counts them together. And watching over all of it is AMLA, the new European Anti-Money Laundering Authority, based in Frankfurt. For the highest risk firms operating across borders, AMLA will not just advise your national regulator, it can supervise you directly. That is genuinely new. So here's how this series works. Track A is the law itself. 7 episodes that walk through every major obligation, but always by starting with the crime it was written to stop. You will never just memorize a rule. You will understand the threat behind it. Track B is readiness. 3 episodes on what you actually do on Monday morning. How to diagnose your gaps, how to build the machine, and how to prove it works before a supervisor ever asks diagnose, build, prove. The rules are written. The clock is running to July 2027. The real question is not whether you will comply. It is whether you understand why these rules exist before someone finds the next gap. Episode 1 begins where almost every laundering scheme begins, at the front door. If you want to actually understand the biggest change to European financial crime law in a generation, not just survive it, follow this series. The full breakdown of every episode with sources is on davincidiligence.com, and the audio version is on our Spotify podcast, Da Vinci Diligence. Next, episode 1, one rule book to rule them all.